So, you've spent about 10 years saving all your money. You finally booked your flights and you're ready to travel to the UK. But then suddenly, you realize or you discover this. What? People in the UK only speak English? Yes, unfortunately, that is true. Hardly anyone in the UK, I would say 99.99999% of the people from the UK do not speak another language, only English. I know, they are extremely lazy. But don't worry, because in this video, I'm going to share with you some essential words or phrases that will help you to get through your trip in the UK. And you never know, you might even make a few friends. I'm going to break the video down into different topics or categories. And this is really important because it will help you to memorize these words or phrases so that when you're in the UK, they will come to you a lot more naturally. Anyway, are you ready? Let's get started. First up, we have general greetings and politeness, which, as you might know already, is extremely important in Great Britain. This is what we are proud of. This is the only thing we are proud of as a nation, our politeness, how we greet each other, how we are around each other, how we consider each other's feelings and emotions. So of course you could say hello, which is fine, but it does sound a little bit formal, let's say. It does sound like something most British people don't use on a regular basis. So you could say something like, hiya, hiya. This is an informal way to say hello. I would say that more women use hiya than men. However, this is not exclusive to women. Some men use it as well. I sometimes say hiya, especially if I want to come across really friendly and approachable. I might walk into a shop and say, hiya, or hiya guys, can I help you? This takes me back to my days in Pizza Hut when I used to go up to a table and I wanted to come across really friendly. So I would say, hiya guys, how's it going? Can I take your order? Another way you can say hello, and you've probably heard this one before, is you right? This could mean something like how are you? We might use it as how are you sometimes, especially if you chuck in there mate, which means friend. You might say, all right mate, meaning how are you, friend? However, sometimes you can just respond with the same expression because it just means hello. So someone might walk up to you or walk past you and they say, all right. And you can just respond by saying, all right. You don't have to respond to the question. You just copy what they said and that's perfectly normal, perfectly acceptable. And it sounds extremely, extremely British. You could even say something like, all right, mate, how's it going? So you chuck in how are you or how's it going after you've said all right already. It sounds a bit weird, but that's exactly how we do it in the UK. A very flexible word you can use in a lot of conversations in the UK is lovely. That's lovely. You're lovely. It's basically a positive response to something or a positive comment on something. So it means that's nice. You could say that film was lovely. He was a lovely person. The meal was lovely. What a lovely day. What a nice day. We use it all the time and it's extremely flexible. And again, if you use it, you're going to sound very British like that. What a lovely YouTube channel you have here, Chris. Well, thank you. That's a lovely thing to say. Thank you very much. Have you subscribed? No? Okay, hit the button now. Subscribe. Thank you. That's lovely. Perfect. Now, expanding on lovely, if you pay someone a compliment and you say, what a lovely haircut you have there, Chris. The other person can say, thank you in response. And the first person can respond with, no worries. No worries. Which basically is a very British way to say, don't mention it. No problem. All good. So whenever somebody thanks you for something, you can respond by saying, no worries. Let's say you've just arrived, you have just landed in the UK, probably on your Ryanair flight, and you let someone off the aeroplane first. You allow them to go. You say, okay, go ahead, you go first. They might say, thank you. Thank you for letting me off first. You can respond by saying, no worries. No worries. Basically meaning, no problem. Don't mention it. It's all good. It's okay. So that's a very British way to say, don't worry about it. No worries. If we think about the person who said thank you or thanks, the person that you let off the aeroplane in that situation, instead of saying thanks or thank you, which is great, a British word you can say, or a British expression, a very short one is tar or cheers. These are two extremely British ways to say thank you in English or in British English. Tar is a little bit more common in the north of England. And if you want to use the other expression, cheers, that's universal across Great Britain. It doesn't just mean when you have a beer like cheers. It can mean that, but we normally use it to mean thank you. So someone lets you off the flight, go ahead. You go first. You can say cheers or cheers, mate. For the next one, let's imagine that somebody has said something to you. And I know you know that British people can be a little bit hard to understand sometimes. They often mumble like this. Cheers. Cheers, mate. You right? So if this happens to you, instead of saying what, which can be a little bit rude, you can say pardon. This is much more polite, and it's basically telling the other person that you didn't understand. Now let's say you're in a restaurant, you've just bought some British food, fish and chips, delicious. And then the person comes over, the waiter or waitress comes over, and they say, is everything okay? You can respond with, perfect, I'm finished here. What's the damage? What's the damage? This means, how much did this cost? How much do I owe you? Can you bring me the bill, right? What's the damage? What do I owe you? It's an informal way of saying, I want to know how much money I have to pay you. What's the damage? And the final two in this category, which are really, really, really important, are some questions. How can you be polite and ask for something? Oh, you can say, of course, can I have? But there are definitely some ways which are much more natural and much more polite in the UK. So if you're asking for something, you could say, could I have, and whatever you want. Could I have a pepperoni pizza, please? Could I have a large black coffee? And something slightly more formal and therefore more polite would be, would you mind? So you could use this with a verb after. So you could say, would you mind passing me the salt? If you're at a table with other people, you could ask, would you mind passing me the salt? Could I have the salt, in other words? All right, imagine this. You've just arrived in the UK, excited to explore, perhaps a little bit jet lagged, and you step outside the airport. First thing you need? A taxi. But wait, you haven't got any data. And suddenly you realize you don't know how to ask for help without looking like a lost tourist. Trust me, I've seen this so many times. Travelers arrive and suddenly they're stuck. No maps, no way to translate, no quick access to phrases that they need. And if you're trying to improve your English while traveling, staying connected is even more important. That's why I always tell people, get an eSIM from Airalo before you go. Airalo is the first digital eSIM store. No need to buy or swap anything anymore. Just download the Airalo app, activate your eSIM, and boom, you're online right from when you land. You need navigation to find your hotel, transportation apps to book a ride, maybe a quick Google search to figure out what Mind the Gap actually means. With an eSIM from Airalo, you're always connected, so you can focus on your trip, not thinking about finding Wi-Fi every 5 minutes. And the best part, with an eSIM, you get to keep your original number. It just adds a UK data plan on top, so you can still use your regular SIM for calls or messages if needed. It works both on iPhone and Android as long as your phone is unlocked and eSIM compatible. So whether you're traveling for fun, for work, or just practicing your English in real life situations, staying connected makes everything easier. No stress, no hassle, just instant mobile data wherever you go. Get your eSIM today. I'll drop the link in the description below. Download Airalo today and use my discount code INSTANTEnglish3 for $3 off your first eSIM. The next category we have is transport and directions. So if you're asking the location for something, you normally might say, where is the train station? Where is the train station? But a more polite way would be to use an indirect question and say, do you know, or do you happen to know where the train station is? So you have to kind of invert the verb. You have to put it after the question word or after the subject even. Do you know where the station is? So you put is at the end, right? Or do you happen to know, which is slightly more polite. It's more indirect. Do you happen to know where the train station is? And the other person can say, oh, yeah, I think it's just down there. Turn left and then turn right and then it's right in front of you. So do you happen to know, or do you know where something is? Do you happen to know where the nearest McDonald's is? Another thing that might be a little bit confusing when you arrive, especially in London, is a difference between underground and overground. These are both trains. The underground is basically the train which is underground, right? In other words, the tube, we call it the tube. In the US, or in US English, they call it the subway. We say the underground or the tube. Now the overground is basically a train in London that goes over the ground. This might be useful for you because you might be staying on the outer edge of London, because I know London can be quite expensive. You might be in zone 3 or 4 or whatever. You might be quite far out. So you're probably, especially if you're in the center of London, you'll probably take the underground train to one station, then you'll get off the underground or the tube and you'll change to the overground train to carry on your journey to your Airbnb or your hotel. Let's move on to talk about food and drinks because, well, that's what we all do on holiday, isn't it? First up, I've got a little phrase for you, right? If you're not that hungry, but you're a little bit hungry, there's a really nice word we use, and it's called peckish. I'm peckish. Are you peckish? It means you're a little bit hungry. Maybe you want to grab a bite, right? You want to get something small. You can say, I'm peckish. I fancy getting a sandwich. I fancy getting a snack. I'm peckish. Are you peckish? Do you want to get some crisps? Should we pop into the shop? If you're very hungry, so sort of the opposite, let's say, almost the opposite, a little bit hungry, peckish. If you're very hungry, you can say, I'm starving. I'm starving. I could eat a horse. Maybe people don't use that expression that often anymore in terms of eat a horse, but you can still use it if you want to. It means you're very hungry, but yeah, definitely starving. I'm starving. I could eat a horse. I'm very hungry. And going back to what I said before about bite, I mentioned bite. So there's a really nice expression we use, or a question even. We say, fancy a bite, which basically means, do you want to get some food? Do you fancy a bite? It's an informal way to ask if somebody wants to eat something. Let's jump in to talk about some food and drink from the UK that you might not be aware of. First up, we have bangers and mash. This is what it looks like. And bangers or banger, a banger or bangers, is what we refer to, an informal way to refer to sausages in the UK, and mash being mashed potato. So bangers and mash is basically sausages and mashed potato. And if you get some gravy with it, the sauce, like the brown sauce, it's gorgeous, okay? A little bit heavy, but you need that, especially if you visit in the winter months, to keep you warm. Next up, it's a Sunday roast. This is what it looks like, as you can see. It has beef, usually, roast beef, potatoes, roasted potatoes, Yorkshire pudding. That's like the bread volcano thing you see there. It's very nice. I promise you, Yorkshire pudding is very nice. And then you have veg. Sometimes you might have chicken. It varies depending where you go. If you do get a Sunday roast, you probably also buy a pint. Now, what's a pint? A pint is a beer. So we don't normally go into a pub or a bar and say, can I have a beer? Some people do, but usually, most of the time, especially guys, they will say, can I have a pint? Can I have a pint of, and then the brand. Can I have a pint of Stella? Can I have a pint of Heineken? Whatever it could be. So you'll probably hear people say at the bar, can I have a pint, please, mate? He gives you the pint. Boom. Here's your pint, mate. That will be £25. And the person who ordered the pint will say, cheers, mate. If we stay with drinks, very famous drinks in the UK, of course, you probably know we're famous for tea. However, we don't normally say, especially if you're around a friend's house, we don't normally say, can I have a cup of tea, please? This doesn't sound very natural. We would normally say, can I have a cuppa? Instead of, can I have a cup of tea? Can I have a cuppa? Can I have a cuppa, please? Mate, can I have a cuppa? Stick the kettle on. If you're up north, as I mentioned before, you could also say brew, instead of tea. I fancy a brew, which means I fancy a cup of tea. Again, I learned this from my years studying up north in Manchester. I learned a little bit about the local slang up north. Oh, I almost forgot that you can also refer to pints or beer as lager. So you can go to the pub at the bar and you can say, all right, mate, can I have a lager, please? And they know exactly what you want. You want a beer. Now I want to talk about something that's really important, especially in the UK, and that's talking about the weather, right? We love to talk about the weather, and it's a great way to make a bit of small talk and practice your English and also make some friends. So let's have a look. So the weather is most likely going to be cold in the UK because for about 8 months of the year, it is a bit cold. And so we have a lot of expressions to describe cold weather. For example, it's a little bit cold, could also be described as it's nippy or it's chilly. So you can approach someone, or maybe you pop into a coffee shop and you can say, oof, a bit chilly today, isn't it? Or a bit chilly today, innit? You can use that expression at the end to encourage someone to interact with you, to respond to what you said. You can say innit, which means isn't it? If you go to the UK in November, December, January, February, it's probably going to be very, very cold. So what are some expressions we can use to describe this situation, this type of weather? Well, instead of saying it's very cold, we can say it's Baltic. If you're down in London and you want to use a bit of local London slang, a slang that's been around for years and years and years, but very localized in London, you could say it's brass monkeys. It's brass monkeys, mate. It's bloody freezing. It's brass monkeys. There's actually another good one you can use is bloody. You can add bloody to anything actually to use it instead of very. So instead of saying it's very cold, you can say it's bloody cold. Or even better, it's bloody freezing, which means it's very cold. So you're down the pub in London, maybe the East End in Hackney or something like that, and you pop in the pub, you can say, oh, it's brass monkeys, mate. And the person behind the bar might say, yeah, it's bloody freezing. Let's use bloody again. We could say, it's bloody boiling. This means it's very hot. Might not be that useful to you unless you go to the UK in July, August, maybe sometime September. You know, global warming is changing the weather in the UK, so you never know. You can say, it's bloody boiling. Also, on the theme of hot weather, you can also say, it's a scorcher, or it's scorching. Again, these both describe a hot day. It's a scorcher, it's a hot day, or it's scorching, it's very hot. If we move to rain, which is very common again, unfortunately, we have lots of ways we can describe rain in the UK. I'm sure you've heard this one before. It's raining cats and dogs. This is a very common idiom that's taught in all English classes around the world for some reason. It's not commonly used all the time. Some people still use it, and it describes heavy rain. It's raining cats and dogs. It's raining a lot. Now, if you want to sound more native, more natural, here are some other expressions to describe heavy rain. It's tipping it down. It's pissing it down. It's bucketing it down. My favorite, it's pouring. It's pouring. And if it's only raining a little bit, right, just a little bit, very light rain, you can say it's drizzling. It's drizzling. Let's go down the pub. It's only drizzling. Or you can also say it's spitting. It's drizzling or it's spitting. Very light rain. So if you're on the train, maybe not on the tube because people don't really talk on the tube, but let's say you're at the bus stop, you're on the train, you're down the pub, talk to the person next to you and just say, describe the day, right? Just say, oh, it's tipping down today. It's pouring. Or maybe, just maybe, is a good day. You could say, it's a scorcher today, isn't it? And I've saved the best until last. Something that I think is really important if you want to survive in the UK, if you want to meet people and get along with people from the UK, you need to know some local expressions, some slang words from the UK. So let's have a look. Let's imagine you're traveling around the UK. Maybe you've taken a long flight. It's been hours. You arrive and you're exhausted. You're very tired, which is perfect. You can use the word exhausted. That's great. But something more local, something more common in the UK is this word here. Knackered. I'm knackered, which means you're very tired. You could also say I'm shattered as well. You might hear people say I'm shattered, or you might hear people say I'm absolutely dead, which means you're very tired. You're knackered, you're shattered, I'm dead. So you've arrived in a place, you are knackered, maybe you have a little nap like I do, and then you wake up feeling great because you're in a new place, it's really exciting. What you can say to say that you're happy, to say that you're excited is chuffed. I'm chuffed to be in London. I'm chuffed because I'm in London. Or you can add a bit more emphasis and say, I'm chuffed to bits. I'm really happy that I'm in London. I'm chuffed to bits to be in London. I want to go and grab a pint in the pub. I want to go and eat some bangers and mash. The only thing is, when you do go to these places like Buckingham Palace or Big Ben or other really touristy locations in the UK, or specifically London, you have to be careful because there can be some dodgy people. There can be some dodgy people who are trying to take your things, or maybe make you buy things which are not very good. So what does dodgy mean? Dodgy means a little bit suspicious or risky. So we often use it for a dodgy place or a dodgy thing. It could be something looks dodgy, let's say a taxi, a train, an aeroplane, some sort of ride in a theme park. But it also could be used to describe people. He looks a bit dodgy. Let's go. Perhaps one of these dodgy people convince you to buy one of their dodgy looking souvenirs, and now you have no money because you've paid too much for this piece of rubbish. What you can say is, I'm skint. I'm skint. I bought this dodgy souvenir. Skint means you have no money. Let's go back to the situation where you're down the pub, okay? And you've ordered a pint or a lager, and you're having a great time. You met some locals, you met some British people, some Londoners, wherever you are. You're having a good time, you're joking, and then they say something to you, they make a joke. You could say, are you taking the mickey? Are you taking the mickey? Especially if they're making a joke about you. If they're making fun of you, or maybe your country, because that's what we like to do in the UK. We like to make fun of each other to try and bring us closer to each other. So what you can say is, are you taking the mickey? Which basically means, are you making fun of me, or are you joking around? Are you taking the mickey? Now we move on a little bit further. You've been taking the mickey out of each other with your new mate in the pub. You've been drinking some pints, some lagers. Now you need to go to the toilet. You can say, hey, excuse me, do you know where the toilet is? Or you can use a nice British slang phrase or word, which is loo. Where's the loo, mate? Could you tell me where the loo is? Do you know where the loo is? Do you know where the toilet is? Okay, so that's everything you need to know on your next trip to the UK, whether that's the north or whether it's the south like London. Those are some great expressions or phrases you can use to get by, to survive, to make some friends, to make some small talk. If you like this video, smash the like button, and I'll see you next time.